Welcome back to the Valor Flight Crew podcast, hosted by Echo and brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and Vertical Valor magazine. In this episode, hosts Mike Fadale and Blake Shrider sit down with someone who brings a rare and powerful perspective to the table. Jason Bazelow, a seasoned HEMS provider whose journey has taken him from the back of the aircraft as a paramedic to the hospital bed as a patient. Jason opens up about the moments that shaped his career, from early inspirations and close calls in the field, to the evolution of medicine and its impact on our patients in flight. This isn't just a conversation about helicopters and protocols, it's about people, purpose, and perseverance. We'll explore the human side of high-acuity medicine, the toll it takes, the camaraderie that keeps it going, and the emotional depth that often goes unspoken. While we often don't realize the importance of care we provide, Jason's powerful story of facing a life-threatening health crisis brings into sharp focus the critical importance of empathy, communication, the medicine we provide, and how it all ties together. Whether you're new to the field or seasoned veteran, this episode is a must listen. It's a reminder to never take life for granted, and behind every mission is a story worth hearing. So buckle in, this is one flight you won't forget. Thank you to our sponsors, Metro Aviation, Copter Safety, and Airbus.
Welcome to the Valor Flight Crew podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and Vertical Valor magazine, produced in partnership with Echo, Every Coast Helicopter Operations. The Valor Flight Crew podcast promotes the personnel and life-saving equipment behind helicopter air ambulance services. Join hosts Mike Fadale and Blake Shrider for in-depth interviews and expert insights from air medical personnel, pilots, communication specialists, and maintenance crews who play critical roles in airborne emergency response.
Line 1 accepting.
Copy, Line 1, gotcha, accepting. You're going to be talking to Red Feather 1 on LCEMS.
Welcome back to the Valor Flight Crew podcast. Mike Fadale here and Blake Shrider, your host as always. Blake, how you doing today, buddy?
Mike, I'm a little tired. I'm going to be honest.
You're looking a little tired there, buddy. A little rough around the edges.
It's been a long weekend, man. I remember last time we talked about your lovely 50-degree weather that you weren't so happy about, and I love that right now. It's like balmy 93.
We're back in the low 60s today, so I'm not a happy camper again. But it's been a busy day so far. Got my workout in, had a couple other appointments, so now we get to sit down and have an awesome podcast. So really looking forward to it. This week, we're taking a little bit of a different path with our podcast than we normally do. And I'm looking forward to having this discussion. We have an amazing guest on today who has quite an extensive career in EMS and HEMS, and then a transition from being a HEMS provider to actually being a patient. And just listening to his story and talking with him before the podcast, I trying to put myself into that position or in his shoes, and it really just kind of blows my mind, all of the trials and tribulations, the changes he's seen in the industry over the years, and really how medicine has evolved, and then how he has evolved as a person since he's had these incidents happen to him. So I'm really looking forward to having a great discussion. Today we get to welcome on Jason Bazelow. Jason, welcome to the Valor Flight Crew podcast. It's amazing to have you on. How you doing today?
Thank you. Really good. I listened to that whole little spiel right there, and he's probably looking behind me to figure out who you're talking about.
Definitely you, but we're really excited to have this conversation today. I think that like I said, your story is just one that I find so impressive, and really looking forward to hearing a lot more about it and sharing this with our listeners.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, Jason, welcome on. We really appreciate you coming in. What Mike and I have really been, we keep tossing around ideas, and it seems like anytime we try to come up with something for the podcast, what we've really tried to do is find a way to connect with our listeners and share from our guests different perspectives of just things that they've seen over the years. We're not calling anybody old. We'll say we're seasoned, well experienced, well versed in things. So Jason, can
Appreciate
you just
that, Mike?
Yeah, I know, right? If you want to start us off, sir, just kind of tell us a little bit about how you got to this point in your career, and a little bit about one of your stories on how you came to be in the HEMS world for us.
I don't consider myself old anymore because after that experience I had last year, I got to restart the clock again. So I am, in fact, 26 months old now.
Well, happy 26th month birthday.
It's old. I'm sorry. See, I can't even do math. So yeah, I came into HEMS really the day I decided I wanted to be a paramedic is the day I realized that paramedics could fly in helicopters. And I ended up doing my ride along in the EMT program back up in New York. And it was like the busiest day in the county to that point. It certainly got way more busier now, but we had 3 separate medevacs in the county that day. Each had 2 aircraft on each scene.
Wow.
And I ended up at 2 of those scenes. One was a terrible structure fire where we flew two patients out. And the other one was a really bad car accident. I was so enamored by the helicopter. They asked me to go down to the ambulance to get the stretcher out of the truck. I didn't realize that helicopters generate a lot of wind. I am, what am I, like 18, 19 years old? And I'm pushing this stretcher up the highway by myself. It's got a whole bunch of linen on it. And I waited as the first aircraft took off, so going down to the other aircraft where the rest of the team was working. And as that helicopter lifted off, the rotor wash blew all the linen off of the stretcher. And now I'm running down the highway like
trying to chase it down.
trying to catch friggin' blankets. And,
you know they did that on purpose, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're like, watch this, guys.
Yeah. So I'm just glad nobody caught that. I'm glad, dating myself. I'm glad it's not like, today, because I'd be all over YouTube now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, true.
But that day really kind of inspired me. And I was one of those kids that I wasn't really I wasn't great at school. I wasn't a sports kid. Believe it or not, I had long hair that, went halfway down my back, and I carried a camera around, and I shot the yearbook. Most of my senior yearbook was shot through me. So I wasn't that kind of person at all, and I had no real direction. National Geographic photographer was really what I wanted to be. Basically, they offered lifeguarding in place of gym class, and I got tired of failing gym class because I didn't want to change. The long-haired kid who wasn't going to participate anyway, didn't like the change. So, but they offered lifeguarding in place of gym class. So I took it, and I loved it. And in order to be a lifeguard at the time, I assume it's the same now, I had to take first aid and CPR through the ambulance corps. And I had a buddy playing with fire trucks, so I said, you know what? When they asked me, I was like, yeah, I'll ride. I did a couple calls and got bit by the bug, and then they paid for the EMT class. And then when I did that ride along, saw that helicopter, I'm like, that's what I want to do in my life.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think we all have, those 1 or 2 moments in our lives that steered us in the direction of this career. And we've all been bitten by that same bug. It is a very powerful bite for sure, for us to maintain this career and to keep advancing within this career, because it really is one that, it'll wear on you after a while if you don't take care of yourself, take care of your body. And yeah, it's a lot of hard work, but it's a very rewarding one, and one that I, certainly wouldn't change. I'm very happy for the path that I've been able to take in this career as well.
That's awesome. I am still that toddler that runs to the window when I hear the helicopter fly over.
I think we all do that still.
Look at the app now. I can figure out who's flying over, who's working.
So then what year did you say you ended up started flying?
I finished my medic the end of 99, early 2000. And I got promoted to the New York State Police Aviation Units through Mobile Life Support in the end of August of 2001. flight training was supposed to start on like September 15th, 2001. And needless to say, that got put off for about 6 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was in Orange County, New York, which is, it's right up the street from Manhattan. So,
yep.
State Police aircraft was busy doing state police stuff. So, I started flying in April 2002.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've been flying for a number of years now. And, obviously this has been a very impactful career for you over those years. It sounds like, looking at your resume, being able to fly with both, HEMS/LE programs as well as straight HEMS programs, and how you've progressed throughout, the industry. I was wondering if there was an impactful story from your HEMS career that was something that you can share with our listeners that really kind of shaped who you are as a provider and how you continued forward in the industry.
For me, it's actually an EMS story. When I started for Mobile Life Support in New York, the owner was a gentleman by the name of Rick Metzger. Him and his wife, Gail, they were fantastic people, and they really cared about their patients. They cared about the community. They built a wonderful company. Rick passed away on the 31st of December, 1999. And I was finishing my paramedic and took my state tests like the first week of January. And we had the funeral and everything, and 40 emergency vehicles in procession from all over the tri-state area. I was the first paramedic released into that organization who never received Rick's blessing. I found myself making sure that because I didn't get that blessing, that, if he happened to be looking down on me at any point while I was taking care of a patient, that I was making him proud. Yeah. There's a ton of other shit that I definitely wouldn't have made him proud. But
it happens.
When it came to the patient care itself, that really was a driving force in how I took care of people. Not just, being an advocate, making sure I knew the medicine. I was never a protocol person. I was always learning medicine, and you'll never have to study for a protocol exam ever. I've never failed one. I've eyeballed them here and there when I'm starting a new position, just to make sure I, know what they have. But I really don't study for the protocol exams. I make sure I know the medicine, and I'll look at the protocols when I got to write my chart.
Yeah, I definitely did that. I think I definitely that came first.
As a disclaimer, we're not recommending that anyone else go through that particular process, but please follow your local state protocols.
I think it just invokes that thought process, of like, I'm pretty sure chronologically this is exactly how I think it went.
But yeah, I don't advocate that process to my students when I'm teaching, but learn the medicine. And then the next thing really was learn how to do everything by yourself, so that when you have another medic or more hands on scene, you will, be able to rely on yourself at all times.
Yeah.
Start an IV, rip the tape, pull the tourniquet out, everything. And, you'll forget once or twice to, damn it, didn't rip the tape. No, you're trying to figure out how to do it, but you become efficient and you can move quick.
You get real good at remembering that tegaderm when you go to start that IV, and it was the one thing you didn't like pre-set up. You're by yourself, and you're like,
you're there one-handed trying to.
It's way over there. Yeah, you're trying to like flip it off. You pull it with your teeth, and the patient's like, "Are you good?" You're like, "Yeah." Can you hold that for 1 second?
I had a patient one time. I was starting an IV on her. And I was a meet with a volunteer crew, and the driver just took off, like floored the accelerator. And I started coming backwards towards the back doors, and the lady reached up and grabbed me. I was like, I am going to land out in the middle of the highway and get rolled by the car behind us. I was like, man, you saved my life.
I owe you one.
It's a symbiotic relationship that day.
One for one. I think it's interesting when you talk about like, how, because I think about how I teach today as well, and then the amount of just data, the amount of access to everything that's in your pocket, where before, I mean, I remember starting out, I printed all our guidelines in a binder. I would keep it on the truck and I would put the like highlighted Post-it notes on like the important ones, so I could reference it real quick, like the blue ones were airway, like the red was like the arrest, like just because you get nervous, and I was always like, well, I need to make sure I know this. And then, you get that like second guess thing, and I just remember having these like massive binder with, everything in it. And now like someone's like, oh, what? Ah, it's on my phone. Yeah, right here. I already did it. Ultrasound. Yeah, it's already done. See ya.
Yeah. It's amazing. It is a double-edged sword though. I've always tried to make sure that I know the stuff I need to know and be able to reference whatever I need to reference. But now we're finding with some students, we're finding that they're using so much of that stuff that they're not retaining. And when it comes time to take tests, they're struggling.
Yeah.
Because they're pulling up, some kind of AI thing and, running their question through it. We're trying to figure out how to combat,
Thanks to our sponsor, Copter Safety. Based in Finland, Copter Safety is the leading, globally approved simulator training center. They provide a full range of courses for AW139, AW169, H125, and H145 pilots. Customize your special missions training with realistic visuals and specialized instructors. Stay one step ahead of reality with Copter Safety.
And I feel like so much has changed with the medicine itself over the years that while I certainly understand the premise and the importance of having protocols, and I certainly understand the premise of having to learn some of all of those special things, especially when you look at, all the stuff in our world in HEMS, with the integration of POCUS, with being able to administer blood, with the advancements in the ventilators, with all of these new technologies, all of these new therapies, all of these extra skills that we're now performing. I think a lot of people get, caught up in the if this, then that, and not necessarily the why behind it. To understand what they need to do in those processes. But I feel like it's so overwhelming for a lot of people when you first start getting into this anymore, especially within, the paramedic program, which some of them are, still the 12 to 18 month program to teach you the minimum of things. And now you've got to learn all of this extra stuff. And so it's about learning how to take a test rather than learning how to treat a patient. And I think that we end up, forgetting about some of those super important things, some of those basic skills that the human interaction between somebody and the care that you provide that way, as opposed to just the physical medicine itself.
I'm, just trying to get through some of these students. And a lot of them, they're fresh out of high school. They finished high school in COVID. So, everything was online. They developed, probably not the best habits when it came to taking the test and studying. And, I tell them depending, no matter what you want to do, or even if this isn't your path, you're going to learn something in this class that might help somebody you love someday. And I'm like, you need to be studying for this, not like you're studying for like a math test, but you need to study this material and learn it so that you become the person that you want to see coming through the door to take care of you or somebody you love. Don't go running these questions through, a filter or whatever. Like, learn medicine, learn the material, learn how to do this. You get their EMT class and decide you want to go be a lawyer. You might help a family member someday just by whatever we taught you. So learn it.
No, there's like this big push that I've seen, to, we got to pass tests, and there's standardized testing, and there's all these things. I was, when I went to medic school, 2008 era, and I was fortunate enough my mentor was somebody older, well seasoned, I should say, kept it basic, right?
Elder statesman.
Yeah. There you go. Like I just, I just remember it was the greatest thing. of you come in and, you go to a call, and the first thing that people do is they go to the monitor and they pull off the BP cuff and the SpO2, and he would just take them off the monitor, just completely take it off the auto BP, it is the great, like people would spend more time like losing their mind trying to figure out where the automated blood pressure cuff was or the other stuff. But, like, hey, where's your blood pressure cuff? I don't, and we need to get a blood pressure. And he's like, yeah, what about the one that's in your bag? Like all crusted up and bent, So I was really appreciative of kind of really always having that mindset. And a lot of my instructors through school were a lot of the same way. Mm-hmm. So I've prided myself on trying to have that, OG, just basic human approach, right? Like touch the patient. And I remember, and I'll call his name out, Stan Ball, best guy ever. Would just, be like, how are you going to know what's up with your patient if you don't talk to them and just touch your patient, get a feeling? He's like, you should have an idea of what's going on with your patient in your mind based off what you see, hear, feel, smell. And then you could use these other tools to like rule in or out what confirm what you're thinking. And I thought that was like this like mind blowing thing. I mean, I'm not a very tech savvy person, but I feel like I can navigate through. And I mean, Christian's probably going to disown me if I said I didn't really use AI or anything. And until like the last like 6-7 months of like doing a lot of extra things, I just would find a book or try to search it and research it, but I feel like this, when we're talking about with this podcast, the evolution of HEMS and where we're at, just to have like that intuition, like you said, and you're trying to instill that, I think is something that I hope that we can not stray far from and keep at the forefront and just instill those principles. And all these cool things are great, right? But we can't forget these basics. And even into the HEMS world, right? You show up in this helicopter, all these cool things, but it's okay. Like we should still start from that foundational level and work our way up.
Yeah. And I mean, there are medics, flight nurses, flight medics. There are people that can run circles around me when it comes to certain things, but I made sure that I had a solid foundation early on, making sure that I could do the job, like I said, kind of by myself. It's served me really well.
Well, speaking of some of the medicine and, talking through your career in HEMS, you said you started off in New York State Police, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was more of a dual role, both LE and HEMS service. And, I was wondering, if you can kind of take us through what that role really looked like back then, working as a paramedic on that combined HEMS and LE platform, and what was the medicine like back then? So we're talking in the late 90s, early 2000s, and how would you compare that to what we are doing today in critical care?
Back then, we weren't flying medical patients at all. So STEMI, strokes, they still went to the community hospital back then. So really, all of our flights were trauma, and because of the way we were made up, they originally went to Maryland and shadowed Maryland to try to figure out how to do that. The only difference is that we were not troopers. We were just a paramedic. And it's funny because some of the pilots I flew with, especially back then, they would call themselves the ambulance drivers. So the state, sergeant,
just the pilot,
police, and the ambulance driver. It was because of what we did. It was different than anything I'm doing now, where a lot of it's transfer work and interfacility transfers, and there's still scenes, and now we're flying STEMIs and strokes and those kind of things. But back then, it was all trauma. It was a single paramedic and a trooper. So there's my big ass wedged in the back of a 407. Or like when you did the hoist work, which was amazing, me in the doorway, trying to raise and lower people and equipment up and down, or trying to get a patient in. But like that work was it was a lot different. We didn't have pumps on our aircraft. We had them on the ambulance side, the 911 side. We actually had infusion pumps. we had the old pneumatic vent because we were just doing, trauma patients. So I didn't need to do like, reverse IE ratio, crazy.
Not all the whiz bang stuff.
Right. Yeah.
I just need a box to blow air in and let it come back out. It's really, so yeah, in the 407, we had 2 tanks and the pneumatic vents. As far as the medicine goes, RSI was still pretty new back then. And it was, there was no interpretation in the protocol. It was, this is what you do. It was so complicated. We had the milligram defasciculating dose of VEC before we pushed the succinylcholine, and then would VEC them afterwards. The whole procedure was regimented, but it was long. So you'd have like a dozen syringes lined up down the freaking bench or on the side of the highway or wherever you
Still
go.
gets that way.
I still feel like it's that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like that was one of the biggest things that was different. And now, I mean, I've got this cornucopia of RSI medications that I can kind of pick and choose, what I want based on the patient's needs. I have ketamine, which I didn't have back then, obviously. So that was a big thing. We were pretty autonomous. We were at one point because it was like anything. They introduced RSI kind of the rest of the county. And then they realized pretty quickly that they needed to pull the reins back on that because it's like you worked 4 12-hour shifts this week and you RSI'd 7 patients. Really? To rule that back in. And I mean, I was doing those RSIs as a single paramedic with no other paramedic. And that was just the stand. That's just what we did.
Yeah,
So
I'm not sure how I feel about that one.
right. So, I'm going up all these meds. I gotta get my intubation equipment ready. I got to get all the meds ready. I was a big fan because, we didn't have like the IO drills that they have now. So you could IO a baby with that hand screwing.
The hand screw one. Yeah.
No, didn't like it. But I would, if I could put like an EJ in them, I'd sit at the head because I could intubate, I could push my drugs. And, it became obviously complicated with a C-collar on, but, if I could, my IV at the upper half of the body, I could push my drugs, do the airway, because I had to do it all. So, that's probably one of the bigger things I can think of that's changed, and rightfully so.
There's probably a lot of people that can relate to that too. I know one of the guys that I work with was telling me that they would take their BVM after the call and wash it out, hang it up to dry the tube, and all right, it's good to go in the next one. Clean it out, disinfect it, let it dry, pack it back up.
One of the convalescent companies up there years ago, they're no longer in business, but they were notorious for reusing nasal cannulas.
No.
Just so wrong.
Any of that stuff. That is awful. That is absolutely awful. No. I'm glad that part of medicine has changed.
I mean, do you guys remember, I remember it was common practice back then, you'd see people start an IV and then take the needle and stick it in a mattress.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Could you imagine, the stuff that was growing in those mattresses?
I think it's interesting to see all of the, the changes over the years. And you talk about being on or flying with a program where pretty much your only objective was scene work, and your only objective for scene work was flying those trauma patients. And, while you didn't have all of the fancy tools back then, you had to really, as you said, rely on yourself. You were still the single provider doing a lot of those things. And I think that in and of itself is very much a lost art in today's world. I'm glad to be working in the critical care world and with a partner and having somebody else to rely on. And I think that that's the safest way to go about doing that. I still like to make sure that I can rely on myself, because if I need to help my partner out, I want to be the one to be able to help my partner out, and vice versa. it's amazing how much, things have changed with the progression of care. Because I'm sure, RSI was a big deal for you back then, but now you look at all the advancements that we've had, and just talking about trauma care itself, like there's so many things that have evolved over the years, and we're really bringing, the care that's provided in the emergency department literally to the field. And I think that it's such a cool transition to see all of that. But I also think, that's where some of the well-seasoned medics, as long as you're open to the change that comes along with that, those are the people that are in a lot of regards doing really well with those extra skills, because they have such that solid foundation that they built upon of having to rely on themselves. So as long as you kind of embrace those changes and move forward and continue to provide that high level care for your patients, and doing it with a friend, if you will, I think that it's really cool to see how that transition has evolved and all the things that we can do for our patients now. I mean, would you ever back then think that you're going to see blood on the helicopter, that you're going to see POCUS, that you're going to see these high fidelity ventilators, in a million
Chest
years? Did you ever
tubes
think
at
that
the
those
patient
were
bed.
things that were coming down the pike for you guys as critical care providers?
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
To think of myself back then when I was, 22, 23 years old, a solo flight paramedic by myself in a helicopter, and to think now, just a couple of years later, like you said, blood products and all these other tools. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. Like I was joking with somebody the other day. Like I remember, like when trauma care was, put 2 to 3 large bore IVs, open everything wide, and
Bleed them clear.
Yeah, exactly.
and hyperventilating your head injuries was
Yep.
practice.
Standard.
Like
Yep.
I could joke around of it, but like because I didn't know any better, because that was the medicine, the standard of care. Like I think back on it, I'm like, God, that was terrible. That's all we knew. That
Right.
was what
But that's it.
was.
We didn't know, right? And I think too back then, we had medical directors that there was pushes for, hey, we need you to sign off on this, right? Okay, here you go, and that's it. I mean, depending on where you worked, if you had a solid working relationship, because you could have one medical director that's also the director for multiple other agencies, right? And so it's hard for the physician to not only be practicing, doing all the things that they have to do, and then be a part of all the other agencies, right? Because somebody has to oversee it. So I also think that, like, obviously as technology has advanced, our reach to another higher level of care, another, thought process and person in this continuum, we didn't have access to it then. So it was like, well, this is what's written, here we go. And like you said, you don't know what you don't know. And we didn't know any different. It sounds good. I mean, it can't hurt, might help, always a crowd pleaser, looks great.
Yeah.
We'll try it.
Go for the show.
Yeah.
But
And it's where we ended up.
Yeah. But that's like, I'm really, and longevity it's weird because, medics by definition are creatures of habit. And to introduce all these tools and, I remember mass trousers, for crying out loud. Like, I've used mass trousers on patients before. Now I'm really getting myself.
So wait, did you start off as the EMTM then?
It was EMT, and in New York at the time it was EMT, and then they added D for defibrillation. It was every manual task driver. But,
Yeah, I think when I started, I think I was one of the first classes that was no longer the EMTM for mass trousers. It was the EMTB at that point. So we were still taught, but not extensively like they were before. And
Right.
Thankfully, it just all they did is collect dust in the side of the ambulance and not have to use them.
Dry rotted, and you go to inflate
Yep.
the thing,
It just crumbles. Yes.
But I used them on at least 2 or 3 patients.
Especially when
Yeah.
you're by yourself.
Or, yeah.
How am I going to keep this pressure up?
Right.
Well,
I think a lot of these things, when you think about how medicine has evolved, I think a lot of the things that we used to do were more so out of necessity because of the amount of hands that we had available to be able to help us in that situation. And now we've progressed to, doing things because it's a necessity for the patient, because we do have a lot more hands that are readily available in some of those situations. But ultimately, it's to make our lives easier and our patients' lives better. And so when you think about like some of the major changes that you've seen in your HEMS career from when you started to, you said about like 2019, 2020 timeframe, in those 20 years or so, what would you say is maybe one of the biggest changes that have positively impacted our patients as far as the care that we're providing?
Honestly, I think for me, the biggest single impact changing tool, medication, whatever you want to call it, honestly, is blood products. I've seen a lot of patients, even if it just bought us time to get them to the OR so they could fix whatever was, busted. To me, like going through everything like blood products, being able to, even when it was just packed red blood cells and plasma, now we're getting, a lot of places are just going straight to whole blood now. Like it's a game changer. You can't.
Yeah.
It is arguably the one thing. I mean, you can swap out pain medicines, you can swap out pressors, Levo, Epi, Neo, they're all going to bring the pressure up for the most part. Yes, they're all better for one thing or the other, but blood products across the board, it's a big change. And now you're seeing communities actually starting to have access where, the county, the supervisors carrying blood products. And now you're getting to the pin job on the side of the highway, and fire department's still cutting them out of the car, but there's blood run. That's a big deal.
Yeah, and I'm a huge advocate. We're doing that here in our county. We've got whole blood rolling around. We have it in our first response SUVs, the critical care SUVs, and we're hoping to transition that to our aircraft here, in the near future. Like you said, it's a huge game changer, and the things where we can buy that patient some time to get them to the next landing part of their care journey, of where they're going to go. It definitely buys them some time. And so, Jason, I kind of wanted to ask, since you were doing HEMS and your law enforcement part of that, would it be uncommon or not uncommon, I should say, for you to be out on a law enforcement mission? And next thing you know, you're like, hey, guys, we got a medevac back out this way. So you have to suddenly change your thought process and where you're going and how you're going to go do that. And so you said you flew with another was it a trooper or officer that was with you?
Yeah, it was. It would be myself, the civilian flight medic, and the New York State police officer, which was usually a sergeant or a tech sergeant, or we'd go out in roles, and I remember a couple times it'd be a medevac from a shooting, and you'd bring the patient to the trauma center and come back and then have to do the law enforcement side. And that was kind of a struggle at times because the officers, they wanted to catch the bad guy. And, now they got to play ambulance driver. And I could certainly, I remember the frustration a couple times, and I got it. I could completely understand it.
And you're definitely switching gears in those moments, and it's a very different mindset, right? The whole mission itself changes as far as what your focus is, what your objectives are, where are you planning on going, how you're going to be carrying that mission out, and switching back and forth all the time. I'm sure has got to be a difficult task for not only the medical crew but also for the pilots in that moment.
And there were some law enforcement stuff that the only way to put it is sensitive. Whatever the law enforcement, whatever was going on was sensitive, and some of those things we would not be included in. Or
Sure.
if we were in like the 407 a day, we flew a 407 and 430. And if we were in the 407 and they had to pick up another officer for some reason, we might be overweight, or they might pick up, 2 or 3 to go do some surveillance work or whatever they had to do. And, you'd have to step off the aircraft. I remember one day we went to go pick up an officer, and he had somebody else with him. We met him basically on the side of a highway, and the pilot's like, sorry, Jason. And the officer,
Start hitchhiking.
the trooper gave me the keys to the cop car. And I'm like,
Wow.
like, I know
Nice.
what a terrible idea is, and this is that. Not give me.
Try not to succumb to those internal thoughts.
I'm like, oh, what's this button do?
Yep.
But they told me, I was like, so, should we go like what they call, call by call? Should we, go out of service? Like, they're like, nope, we're just going to be like over that hill over there. And, don't say anything. And it was like a real fine line, because like the troopers had one kind of way of approaching things, and we had different, and you really had to sometimes kind of navigate. And the pilot that day is like, he goes, hey, we're just going to be over there. No big deal. Keep us in service. And, I'll be monitoring the EMS frequency. And if we get launched, like, I'm just going to come back and get you. I'm like, all right. As Murphy's Law would have it,
Of course.
tones drops. And I'm standing there in the middle of a cornfield in upstate New York. And I'm like, tell me he's listening to that. And they're called like second call on the radio. Like, you guys copy? Yeah, we're copy. Like, aren't you in the air? Like, they're in the air. I'm standing in a cornfield right now. They went like not right up the street. And man, he came tear-assing into that freaking cornfield. Like something out of like you'd see in Vietnam, or like just came screaming in there. 2 troopers jump out, jump in. Yeah. It was a great job though. Like, I really enjoyed. Yeah, we did hoist. We did. One night we're sitting there watching the sunset, just sitting in lawn chairs, like smoking cigars, and next thing you know, some guy like threatened his wife and took off running, and the medics were cross trained in like the FLIR system. So, we're pulling up, and I'm getting the cameras ready, and now we're going on a police chase.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty cool to kind of do some of those things and have to switch those gears. Like, well, I'm sure the mindset is sometimes a challenge. Like the job description and the things that you get to do, it's there's not many people out there that have that capability. And so I think that's such a cool, job description to be able to kind of have that variety, and it keeps it interesting, right? Like, it keeps it fun out there flying and doing those things and having the different mission types.
Yeah, I remember the first time I was on the hoist cable, and I am 30 feet below a 430, probably about 100 feet off the ground. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, this is as good as it's ever going to get.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
No doubt.
I think that's such a vast difference when you went from the 407. You go get in the 430.
Yeah. Make a rollerblade around.
So much room for activities, and
It's so much room.
and it's fast.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
I think it's interesting. We talked a lot about the how the medicine has evolved over the years, and talking about your role within a combined, HEMS LE service, just some of the different types of flights you're able to do. But when you talk about aviation itself, how have you seen the changes in aviation evolve over your career? Because I imagine, it's not just the medicine that has evolved, that is also the flying aspect of it. And what kind of things have you seen kind of change or improve within the industry for aviation?
The biggest thing and everything to me that has changed has just been part of bringing in better safety, whether it be like, I remember doing like heading and distance on a map, and then you might get your coordinates as you're flying. And a lot of times by the time we launch, we get the coordinates, but we started with heading and distance. It's this degree for 52 miles.
Yeah.
And like that, the introduction of IFR, and we actually had the IFR on the 430s, and we didn't use it. They used more for like the law enforcement side than, because you couldn't do an IFR flight into an intersection kind of thing,
Right.
So that wasn't possible. But like I remember, and we used to fly in weather that I wouldn't even think about going in now. There's literally, just literally follow the highway across the poles.
Yeah, I follow roads.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, the ceiling is, 110 feet at best. The road is fuzzy because of, the weather, and you're just looking across the poles. Like, could you imagine that today? Dear God.
Not in the slightest.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
And it was terrible. Like, these guys were all amazing pilots, don't get me wrong. But like I said, you kind of knew it was risky. It was calculated. There were times where it was like, no, I ain't going out in that, not at all.
Sure.
But there was a lot of times we went out and stuff that, nope.
Yeah. You just didn't know.
Yeah.
Of like what was going to be on the other side of that.
Yeah.
And like, well, I think we can get there if I can see this and I can follow that. Yeah, we should be good. It's 20 miles, 25 miles. Yeah, we should be good.
Yeah.
We should. We might be okay.
And you look at, the change in culture and safety. And you look at how many helicopter crashes were there in early to mid 2000s versus now, like we still have them.
Yeah.
I had my partner, one of my partners was in one recently, and everybody came out okay. Part of that, I think, is safety.
I think looking at a lot of the safety stuff that has evolved over the years, it's both on the technical aspect of it. Like, we have amazing companies that are building really quality products as far as the helicopters go. We have some exceptionally skilled pilots in the industry who train constantly, whether that be in IFR or VFR conditions. They're out there making sure that all their skills are up to date and fresh, just like we do on the medical side of the house. We have some of the most brilliant maintainers. Like I can't even imagine trying to, be given this, well, this and this and this aren't working, and there's miles of cables to figure it all out. I wouldn't even know where to start. And so we have some absolutely brilliant mechanics out there that are really, the unsung heroes of being able to keep us up in the air flying.
Yeah.
And then I think it's also multifaceted in that you also have the CRM aspect of it that has really changed over those years. And, if you can kind of talk about like, what did CRM mean in, 2001 versus what does CRM mean in 2025?
We trained in New York to be really part of the team, and you had to be, especially when it came into, if you're doing hoist operations, the person who is running the hoist, bringing people up and down, they're the one that's actually technically flying the helicopter. Yeah, the pilot's making all the moves, but when you're in the doorway and you're looking down, you are, move, this many feet forward, sideways, back, like whatever. And on a windy day, man, it became like you got task saturated very quickly. because I didn't come from a regular critical care flight program back then, crew resource management, where I know it's gotten better industry wide, we were really focused on good crew resource management back then, because you had to. Our missions depended on it, especially from hoist or doing searches. And we were, there were times where we would do a search, and like in the 430, and I'd put the harness on that I would use for like doing the crew resource management stuff, the hoist stuff, I'm sorry. And I'd throw the doors open and do this, do my surveillance that way. I'd lay on my belly and, a little head poking out of the door, or just sit in the doorway as we're going back and forth looking for a hiker or something like that. Because of that that style of work that we did, I'm happy to say that crew resource management and just interacting and really assessing, even when we were flying crappy weather, we had a good huddle before we went out there. That's the one thing I don't really think I got to see evolve much, because we were pretty, I've never been in a position where I was considered like self-loading baggage. Like I've always wanted to know, and thankfully most of the pilots that I've flown with too, they've always been interested in some of the medicine.
You have to share a little bit back and forth.
Yeah, a little bit back and forth. And, what was good is like, if it was hitting the fan in the back, or, they had somebody in there who wasn't as skilled maybe as somebody else, they knew that, like, I've never heard that dose of that medicine before. One of my last pilots I worked with, great dude, he came up with his own names for everything. So it was like, the squeezy breather.
I think it just points to like this whole shift, because it did go both ways, like not only can medical crew be very essential to the flight operation, the aviation operation impact that we can have. I might not know how to fly. I have a pretty good idea. I've played a lot of PlayStation. I feel like I could try to figure it out, right?
Don't think it's quite the same there, Blake.
It's close. But like, if you see that, hey, we should not be descending, or, why are we turning when you're looking over here? Like it's good to see that things have changed. I think a lot of that came from people like you that have worked in where you had that split role, to where it proved invaluable that, I might be medically trained and I can do some of these things, but I could also point out like what's wrong, and I can at least voice that concern, and then somebody else can pick up on that. And then we can all have that collaborative discussion at the time that something is happening. And then we can take those steps to mitigate that. And I think that's been a huge resource that, like you said, you might not have been experienced as self-loading baggage. I can pack some things pretty good into the back of an aircraft. I feel like, I can carry a lot of bags. I can throw that stuff in there. But I think that we've really done a good job at highlighting for all med crews, that we can be invaluable. We don't just have to sit in the back on the dead leg. The pilots can have if you tell us what you want and you can train us to the things that we should be looking out for, we're right there with you. We can help you out and take some of that load off. And then, it keeps everybody safe.
Yeah. And even working here and I started getting into, flying for these hospital programs here in North Carolina. Like some of the pilots I flew with, they're old military guys, and they wanted to know that if something happened, that they could rely on you as their resource. So they didn't need you the tablet. They taught you how to sit down and, teach you how to read the plates of the different runways and, what the different approaches, were and
would look like.
Yeah. That you knew that, if you couldn't see the runway coming in IFR, in this area, you're going up to 3,000 feet. And then, I just
call for help.
Yeah, I knew it. It was cool.
So, like, coming from a background where you had such positive CRM experiences throughout your entire career, were there any incidents that you ended up having that maybe were close calls or something that kind of gave you the odd feeling of, uh-oh, this isn't right?
Yeah.
Where CRM really had impacted the overall outcome of those particular situations, just to kind of highlight, some of those difficult situations or calls that you were on.
I remember one time we got launched. It was wintertime, and it was a gentleman. He was he got hit in the head with a tree they were logging. He got hit in the head with a tree like the diameter of a hubcap and like 10 feet long. And as they were cutting, they had somebody up there cutting, and this thing fell.
Bad day.
Egged him right in the head. Felt so bad. And we flew out there. It was actually, by the time we got launched, it was dark. We had in distance. We didn't put the coordinates in because as we always like to challenge ourselves. Like, we know heading in distance. Let's see if we can find it. Nighttime was easier because you had all the, the blinky lights. So it was wintertime. Why they were cutting trees down in wintertime is beyond me, but there was snow cover on the field. And we came down to land, and we were in the 430. And the fire department put us in the snowy field. They could see, all the ambulances and everything were there. And I got out of the aircraft, and I shut the door, and it popped back open. Did it again, popped back open. Would not latch. I could not. The door just kept, and now, we're idling, and it kept popping open. And now I'm plugged back in. I'm talking to the pilot. We're trying to troubleshoot what's going on. They were asking over the radio, like, we're aware you have a problem, but can you at least send the medic over? Because they need the right side of the patients. And all of a sudden, the entire aircraft, tipped up like this towards me.
Wow.
While I was still plugged in. And he grabbed the stick and freaking basically put it back down. And, over the headset, it was, get the F in the helicopter. And it's like I had one hand on a door frame, one hand here, my foot on the step. Now, my dear 430 has dual controls on it. And my other foot left the ground because he picked the helicopter up. And I'm climbing in over the cyclic and the collective and all this stuff, because they were on my side too, into the aircraft. And then the door shuts perfectly. And what we realized was that under when you looked at the field from the air, it looked flat. Yeah. But there was just enough of a cattywampusness to the field that it basically twisted the airframe just enough that the door wouldn't close. That's all it was. And, close the door. I think I may have mother F'd him a couple of times. And
cleaned up your flight suit.
Yep.
Yeah. We got to go back to the station so I can change my flight suit to come back and take care of the patient.
Yes.
But yeah, we repositioned. Everything was safe. I watched this thing coming at me. And that was a significant emotional event, to say the least. And I was shaking, and
I would be too. Yeah.
I was drawing.
How could you not be?
Yeah, I was drawing up the RSI meds, and trying to put the blade in the patient's mouth, and they're like, "Are you okay?" Because nobody had an idea what happened.
Right.
I was, me and the pilot were the only two people that knew that this had occurred. And thank God for his ability to react so quickly. I intubated that patient with my hands shaking, uncontrolled.
I think I'd been a little nervous in that situation too. Yeah. And again, you're the only provider there, so that is able to do the RSI. So that obviously puts a little bit of extra pressure on you as well.
Yeah, it was. That sucked. We got the patient RSI'd, flew him to the trauma center, and he was the only, to this day, was the only TBI that I have ever seen personally, that he would go bradycardic into the 30s and then slingshot up to like 180 and then back down to the 30s. All sinus the whole time, but his rate would actually pendulum back and forth. I was like, it'll probably stop eventually anyway. But yeah, that was a heck of a flight. And the pilot, the amazing pilot, his ability to react was spot on. And, I've had a couple of close calls over the years. We almost hit a skydiver one day.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Valor Flight Crew podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140-plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors. Thanks to our sponsor, Copter Safety. Based in Finland, Copter Safety is the leading, globally approved simulator training center. They provide a full range of courses for AW139, AW169, H125, and H145 pilots. Customize your special missions training with realistic visuals and specialized instructors. Stay one step ahead of reality with Copter Safety.
That wraps up another powerful episode of the Valor Flight Crew podcast. A huge thank you to Jason Bazelow for joining us and sharing not just his professional insights, but his personal journey, reminding us all of the deep humanity at the core of this work. From the evolution of patient care and technology to the importance of communication, culture, and compassion, Jason's story is a testament to the resilience of those who dedicate their lives to others, even when they themselves face the unimaginable. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with your crew, your colleagues, or anyone who needs to hear that they are not alone in the highs and lows of this profession. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with us on social media to stay in the loop with upcoming episodes. Until next time, stay safe, take care of yourself, and keep showing up for your crew and your patients. We'll see you next time.